Hey guys, welcome back to Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to examining the work of writer-director J.J. Abrams as well as his greater Bad Robot universe. I'm your host for this time around. My name is Marcelo Inostroza, joined as always by my fellow co-host, Matt Crandall. And on today's edition of the show, we'll be talking about the Apple TV Plus Bad Robot show, Presumed Innocent. And today we'll be talking about the pilot entitled Bases Loaded. So, Matt, I have a favor to ask of you. Don't go in there. It's really bad.
It's really bad, and let's do our jobs, shall we? So, this show, Presumed Innocent, is written and spearheaded by David E. Kelly, produced by J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot. So, J.J. is on as one of the main executive producers, but the fingerprints all over this are David E. Kelly, who, known for many shows, Ally McBeal, The Practice, Boston Legal, was a lawyer at one point, and in the 90s, they did turn this novel, Presumed Innocent, into a movie starring Harrison Ford. Now, everybody was interested because you got Bad Robot, you got Apple TV. Apple TV just loves to throw money at people to get big stars. And so when this was announced, it was David E. Kelly is going to do Presumed Innocent. And in the role that Harrison Ford first took on is Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, when I first heard this, I was intrigued because I do love Jake. I think Jake's awesome. But Jake is also he plays a lot of roles where he's super weird asshole. And Harrison Ford is not that, which made the movie of Presumed Innocent, they're taking one of Hollywood's most likable leading men and putting him in a situation where he is going to be on trial for murder. And this show starts from a point where our weird, creepy weasel leading man might be a creepy, weird weasel who's done a murder. So I find just out of the gate, this has a different tone. Because if you tell me in 1990, Harrison Ford did a murder, I'm like, well, his character is innocent. Come on. Harrison Ford doesn't do murder. But you tell me in 2024, Jake Gyllenhaal's the lead and he's accused of murder. I'm like, Jake Gyllenhaal might have done the murder. So what is your footing going into this? Were you familiar with the Harrison Ford movie or the source material book, which we won't spoil in case anybody's listening to this who doesn't know how that goes. But where were you coming at this show from, Marcelo?
I was coming at the show from a completely blind place. So everything that you took into it, I didn't have. I am a fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, but the thing that I really appreciate about this pilot from the layman's point of view, again, I did not know about this movie. I did, So this iteration of the story is the first version, at least for me. I really like the way that David E. Kelly layered the backstories of all these characters. The pilot takes us through one question, right? He shows us one event, but from multiple angles. And I am looking at the character of Rusty as someone who is the best lawyer, in his field, but also I'm looking at someone who is conflicted and someone who doesn't know what he wants out of his life, specifically out of his marriage, right? Because the woman who is murdered in this pilot, basically, I believe, gave Rusty sort of the type of marriage that he wanted that he couldn't get from his other wife. So my latching on point of this series was the way that David E. Kelly wrote it and the intricacies that he gave all the characters.
He does give a lot of the characters, and that's a David E. Kelly signature, is give the characters a lot of depth and a lot of quirks. Sometimes, this is the more grounded version. Anybody who watched Boston Legal through to the end knows that sometimes he goes overboard with some of the quirks and stuff he can give to characters. Obviously, Apple TV, the poster is Jake Gyllenhaal because that's who we paid the big money for. But they load this up with great character actors as well, including Jake Gyllenhaal's own brother-in-law, Peter Sarsgaard, as Tommy Malto, who is kind of like the the alternate Rusty at work. And what we find out is that Rusty's boss, played by the incredible character actor Bill Camp, Raymond Horrigan, Tommy is his like enemy. So Rusty is his number one boy, and Tommy is like the mirror version of Rusty. And there's a guy who's running for the new position of DA. So Jake's boss has to deal with Nico Delaguardia, this guy who's coming after his job. And it's hard to do his job while he's kind of fighting for his job. And so I do like that as we see this, these characters all have their own quirks. So we find out that, you know, Raymond is loyal to Rusty and Rusty's loyal to him to a fault. And we see that as we go through their dialogue, from Raymond never suspecting that Rusty has anything that he's not told him, and from Rusty even going so far as to go on TV and trash the opponent, even when it's pretty clear that the writing is on the wall that his boss is on the way out. And I like that Delaguardia, we find out, is a guy who is just a typical suit. He's trying to be the new DA. He's, you know, there's going to be an election when this episode starts, but this guy drags everything out. He drags it out because he just is going through the motions. He doesn't actually care. He just doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. And so I like when they call him, his nickname is Delay, because he just delays and delays. And we see that Peter Sarsgaard is his Rusty. And by the end of this episode, you know, Rusty, who is working on this case of his murdered coworker, who, as we watch the events unfold, we start to learn he had an affair with this person. And what this also does is introduce us to his family, Ruth Nega and his kids. The kids are not in the Harrison Ford movie like at all. So the wife is, but the kids are not important. And so seeing this where Rusty gets the call as he's playing baseball with his son that Carolyn has been murdered, and he tells his wife, you know, Carolyn's been murdered. And we can tell by how she reacts and how she does not want to go to the memorial that there is like a lot of baggage here. And so I do like that the economy of the writing and the way that it's performed. This episode is called Bases Loaded because they literally are loading the bases with everything we need for the rest of this series to play out. The dynamics of the two different squads at work, the Sarsgaard and Delaguardia, the Jake and Raymond, Rusty's home life, seeing that his wife doesn't want to be involved, doesn't seem that sad that Carolyn got murdered. And as Rusty is investigating, we slowly uncover he had this inter-office fling. He goes to counseling with his wife. And so we see like the psychiatrist knows about this. We see a lot of stuff in this episode where it's like they really are laying a ton of groundwork. But I did like that the way that the episode starts is that we see Rusty kicking ass in a courtroom, so that we do know when he, by the end of this episode where it really looks like, okay, now he's in some serious hot water, not just his main guy has lost the election, he might actually be the number one suspect for the murder. I like that we know that he's competent at his job, so we're going to have to see how he can get out of this, because we just have to assume he didn't do the murder. How are you feeling as they really are loading the bases with tons of character, but they aren't doing it in a way that feels like we're being spoon-fed exposition? They're doing it fairly organic for a show like this.
I loved the fact that they loaded the bases figuratively from a story perspective, because from a editorial point of view, this episode does something so fascinating with the score and Jake Gyllenhaal's acting as well. There's a sense that Rusty is running out of time. This episode has an undercurrent of anxiety that drove me happy crazy, because I'm like, at what point is the bomb going to blow up? Because obviously I knew, I had a general sense of what this show was about, but I had no idea that Rusty's wife knew that he had an affair with the woman who died in this pilot. I had no idea. So that was really surprising to me, that David E. Kelly had his wife know everything, and for her to be so accepting of it to a point, because the only reason that she's being accepting of it is because she wants to keep her fucking family together and she fucking loves them. But there's a point in this episode when she has a conversation with Rusty and she's like, I know you. If you fucking do this, you're going to disappear. And if you do, she didn't say it. And if you do, she didn't say it, but like, I don't know how we're going to come back from this. In good storytelling, you have an event and then that event causes something else. And then the next thing to happen, the next thing that happens is a direct result of the thing that happened before. So I really love the way that David E. Kelley interconnected everything, and like he built a story pizza of building blocks. And he was like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take this. And it was a perfect demolition of storytelling. Like, look, guys, I need to explain something. I'm not used to David E. Kelley. So this is really my first exposure to him as a storyteller. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy knows what the fuck he's doing. Because the way that he did it, so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's really well constructed and feels like a throwback. You know, the novel is from the late 80s, and this does feel like, you know, when we say like they don't make them like this anymore, this is kind of like that legal thriller that really puts you on the edge of your seat. And I like as Rusty is put in charge of the case by Raymond, and he starts investigating. And we start to learn a few interesting tidbits along the way that Carolyn's body was tied up and positioned in a way that is reminiscent of a case that Rusty and Carolyn tried previous. So they put a guy away for murder, for life in prison, and now this has echoes of it. So there's this thing like, did they put the wrong guy away? Or is this somebody who has done this because they had knowledge of the case and they're trying to, you know, divert suspicion? So I like that we find that out. The home stuff, I like that we find out his kids are struggling a little bit. We see him playing baseball with his son, but there's like a bit of anger issues going on. And then his wife says the Carolyn stuff, and we basically find out that he admitted to an affair previous, but she thought it was over. And like, she's kind of telling us like it had to be over. It couldn't have restarted. Otherwise this will be a betrayal all over again. And as Rusty scrambles, you know, before we know exactly why he's scrambling, you know, he's getting upset at the coroner. He's acting erratic. And then we start to realize that the affair had started up again. And Rusty might be one of the last people who ever saw this woman alive. So as they give us these like quick flashes and stuff, we have to kind of piece it together. But we aren't the only ones who are piecing it together, because Peter Sarsgaard, good old Jake Gyllenhaal's real life brother-in-law, who hates Rusty Savage, is starting to realize that something might be fucked up here once he starts to take over. Because after the election happens and Raymond is on his way out, this guy with no shame, I love there's a moment where he's like, nothing is beneath me, I once fucked an ottoman. And it's like, what the hell? This guy's a weird dude. But as the changing of the guard is happening, and Tommy Malto is like, how can you have fucked up this case so badly? And then Tommy starts to dig into it. And the final scene of this episode is like this big showdown where, you know, Rusty is like, you're a fucking hack, Tommy. I fucking hate you. And Tommy says, you can't be this inept. Like, I've been looking over this case, and the only way you have made so little progress is maybe because you don't want to make any progress. And we have some information about Carolyn, and when she was murdered, she was also pregnant. And this episode ends with, you know, do you have any idea who the father might be? And the way that this is said is like a direct accusation. Like, hey, Rusty, we fucking know the DNA is going to come back and it's going to be you motherfucker. What are you thinking in these moments? Rusty is in a real bad spot because he has fucked up this case, and now it's looking like he might be the number one suspect, and the victim may have been pregnant with his child.
I couldn't believe it. I can't believe the way that the way that these fucking lawyers talk to each other. Their work environment is so fucking toxic that I'm like, how do these fuckers get through a day with one another? I like these are the best, worst lawyers on the fucking planet. And also that that fucker, Skarsgård. I hate that fucking guy. I I hope that Rusty had nothing to do with this. I hope that he's getting framed. But based on your comments, if you look at this pilot straight, Rusty could have been wanting to hide his affair with Caroline the whole time. Or the other way you could look at it is that Caroline maybe isn't the lawyer that Rusty thought she was. And the reason that I'm saying that is because of, she fucked Rusty. And everything about Carolyn on the surface looks, oh, she was the best lawyer. She had her secrets. But I think that Rusty knows the real Carolyn. And because of that, I wouldn't put it past Carolyn if she actually put the wrong person in jail and she fucking knew it. And that's the reason why someone hogtied her and killed her in the gruesome way that they did. Like, I'm fascinated to see if Rusty slowly discovers that in the process of trying to weasel his way out of fucking jail. Because before that conversation, his wife gives him an ultimatum. She goes, I'm trying to do my absolute best to keep this family together, but I need you to step the fuck back. And if you don't, So David E. Kelly has layered this cake so expertly. So by the end of it, you're like, fucking smash that cake, because I want to see how Jake Gyllenhaal's character is going to pick up the fucking pieces. Because right now, I have no idea how the fuck he's going to get out of this. And that to me is the most fascinating thing ever. I have no idea how he's going to get out.
Yeah, he has layered this in such a way that there are twists and turns. And I did like that we see, Raymond had no idea that Carolyn and Rusty had a romantic relationship, but other people in the office did know. So it wasn't like the best kept secret ever. And as you said, Carolyn herself had secrets, because Rusty goes to the memorial for her and he's like, who the fuck is this kid? They're like, what do you mean? That's Carolyn's kid. And he's like, she has a kid? And like, it's really weird that she had, an ex-husband and a kid that she had no contact and didn't ever mention. So Rusty is taken aback, being like, oh, like I kind of knew about this, but I didn't know like that she was such a bad mom. And as he's kind of digging into the case, it's like a really weird situation. It's like, what was going on here? Why would Carolyn cut off contact from like her young son? And why wasn't she a good mom? Being a lawyer can take up a lot of your time, but like, it felt like there was more to this character we haven't uncovered. And even Rusty is thrown because he thought he knew everything about her, but now he's wondering if there is more that he didn't know. And so I like that the way the characters are aligned and are presented, our assumptions are sort of being proven false, and we're getting more information bit by bit as we're kind of peeling back this scenario. And as you said, Sarsgaard, you hate him, but like, I love to see him and Jake just throw daggers at each other with the way they're looking. And you're like, oh man, I hate Tommy so much. But then part of me is wondering, does Rusty have it in him to have done this? Is there some heat of the moment or like some kink gone too far that we haven't uncovered yet? Because again, this isn't Harrison Ford. This isn't a guy that I think couldn't do murder. This is Jake fucking Gyllenhaal. This is the Nightcrawler. This is the ambulance man himself. So like, this guy can play a weird little freak if he wants. And it makes me wonder, like, did David E. Kelly lean into that? Are we going to find out that maybe Rusty did something that even he doesn't realize he has done? So I'm interested to see where it's heading. And I think that the way that they put these pieces together, again, feels like that classic 90s courtroom thriller, erotic thriller mashup that we kind of long for. And a lot of these Apple TV prestige shows, they stop after they get the A-list talent, and they don't make sure that the scripts are like dynamite, which gives you like, lavish, expensive shows starring big stars that completely suck. And you watch 4 episodes and you're like, ugh. But that's not what this is, because so far the characters in the scenario, you're like, okay, I'm intrigued. Please don't fuck this up, right? And luckily, David E. Kelly, when he's in his legal mode, this is much more straight than an Ally McBeal or a Boston Legal. But like, those shows were so charming and yet smart. Like, the legal stuff going on was was pretty by the book, even if they fudged some stuff for TV. Now, David E. Kelley of late has been more soapy. He's been more Big Little Lies than he has courtroom things. So I'm wondering if this is kind of the intersection of those two things. Is this the soapy, sex and murder of like a Big Little Lies mixed with the courtroom stuff of The Practice? Is that kind of the lane he's carving out here?
I actually loved The Practice when I was a kid. I watched it a lot. I don't listen. I've never seen Pretty Little Liars. I look, as someone who is not familiar with David E. Kelley. I mean, look, guys, I know who David E. Kelley is because any respecting writer who's inspiring knows who the fuck that guy is. But I seriously think that he's doing this straightforward. As somebody who loves legal dramas, I think he's doing this straightforward. I don't think this is going to be a mixture of Ally McBeal or Pretty Little Liars or anything like that. I think it's just going to be straightforward. And the reason that I say that is because the tone and the crassness, and the crassness and how serious he's taking the material. I cannot foresee a moment when Jake Gyllenhaal is talking to one of these fucking assholes that he has to deal with, and he's going to crack a joke. I don't see that.
Right. Well, and yeah, I was saying he was just taking the legal aspect with Big Little Lies is exactly this tone. So if you didn't see the HBO sensation Big Little Lies, then maybe you don't know. But is exactly this deathly serious tone, but mixed with the, Raymond Horrigan fucked an ottoman legal things of David E. Kelley's other stuff. I don't think Jake Gyllenhaal is going to do a fucking banana peel fall or something. It's not.
Oh, okay. I am so fascinated with the way that David E. Kelley has constructed this. And look, you just mentioned a little while ago that Apple TV shows rely on great stars, but their storytelling after a while falls off a cliff. I really think that Apple TV should take a lesson from their approach to this show and the way that they've constructed it. I really think Apple TV is at its best when it has storytellers who are at the wheel 100% of the time. And I think that this show is going to be great because it's going to be driven all the way through by David E. Kelley. And David E. Kelley is going to command everything. He reminds me a lot of Taylor Sheridan from from the way that he. Now again, I don't know if David E. Kelley is going to write every episode, but there's a sense of authorship with David E. Kelley. You could just you could see it, and I think Apple TV would be wiser in the future to invest more time in individuals like this.
Right. Well, and part of the problem is that there are a lot of creators and even writers who don't want to write 8 episodes of TV by themselves. And looking at, we are going to discuss all 8 episodes of this first season. Looking at it, David E. Kelley wrote every episode except one, but he had a co-writer on almost all of them except for these first 2, which means that, as you said, he is hands-on the whole time. This is executive produced by JJ and Bad Robot. We don't really have any Bad Robot people kind of in the writer's room. I think that they had the Apple TV deal and they got David E. Kelley in and they probably had the rights to the novel. And the way that it feels to me is that JJ was kind of like, David, I have this novel. You want to do it. I'll get you the money and then just go do it for us. But I'm not going to insist on anything and I'm not going to put my stamp on any of this, which, JJ has had a few other shows on Apple TV that seem similar where, Bad Robot did a show called Little Voice and they did a Stephen King adaptation, Lizzie's Story. And those also felt like JJ enabling other people to do what they were going to do with his company, just kind of, being the main production people, but he has not been super hands-on creatively in terms of that. And I don't know if that's by design, he's so busy with other things, or, he just feels like if he Bad Roboted it too much, it might feel overwhelming.
When it comes to JJ giving Bad Robot over to people like David E. Kelley and deciding to be hands-off, do you think that there's still a level of quality control, or do you think that JJ is just really good at choosing people who know what the fuck they want.
There must be some level of it, but I definitely think it would be like, when they do a show like Little Voice and the people who are making it are not as experienced. I feel like that's a show where maybe he would step in if he wanted to and say like, hey, maybe you guys should try this. And, they couldn't have got that show made without him. This is kind of different because, yes, Bad Robot produced this, but maybe it was just because they owned the rights to Presumed Innocent. Because I guarantee you, David E. Kelley could walk into Apple TV by himself and get any show off the ground because he's David E. fucking Kelley, right? Like, the door at HBO is open to him always. So I that's the only like weird thing about this is, why is Bad Robot involved when it feels like such a David E. Kelley joint?
Maybe now I have no idea why David E. Kelley would do this, but maybe David E. Kelley came to Apple by himself and said, I want to do the show about this movie, but Bad Robot has the rights. So maybe it went the other way. Maybe David E. Kelley talked to JJ.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I do like this show, and the only Apple TV negative is that when this show started, and we are going to go through all 8 episodes, a lot of people assumed that they were just going to do a contained story, and like Apple TV's blockbuster legal thriller from a few years ago, Defending Jacob, it was a self-contained story. It was a one and done miniseries, and that's what everybody thought this was. But then this becomes one of Apple TV's most watched shows that doesn't feature a likable soccer coach, and all of a sudden it gets greenlit for a second season, and it's like, oh, okay, what are we doing here? Because the book is like one season worth of TV worth of material. So how are they going to spin this? Because, taking a 300-page novel and somehow doing multiple seasons of TV seems a little daunting.
So I hope that David E. Kelley, when he saw the writing on the wall and when he saw how successful this thing is, I hope he has some more story to tell that makes sense. Cause yeah, that makes me nervous.
Well, and so I'm definitely a little nervous, as we head into the remainder of the episodes, because you just wonder, did they do a version where if this was the only thing, it would be a satisfying ending, and then maybe like tacked on a little bit to tee up that second season? So we'll have to see. We are here at the beginning, but if you were going to rate this first episode, Marcelo, on a scale of like 1 to 10, in terms of, how much you enjoyed it, how much it set things up for the remaining 7 episodes of this season, where would the first episode, Bases Loaded, of Presumed Innocent land for you?
I am going to give this episode a 9 for only one thing. It's really fucking stupid, but I have to give David E. Kelley, come on, you did that just for dramatic purposes. There is no way on fucking God's green earth that if a law office lost one of their prosecutors, there's no way on fucking earth that their own lawyers would investigate the murder of one of their own. That's ridiculous. Cause I'm like, guys, the whole episode I was screaming in the back of my head, this is a conflict of interest. But you know what? David E. Kelley did such a good job at the way that he layered the story that I didn't fucking care. So because of that, I give this episode, I give this pilot episode, Bases Loaded, a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you with a 9, because I was really impressed with this pilot. Like, it really hit all the things it needed to hit. The tone was right. I really dug it. The only thing I, would ding it is, yeah, you are right. They probably, even if it is their jurisdiction and county, because of the conflict of interest, they probably would have to bring in an outside team to work this one-off, case, because everyone involved, especially Rusty, would be way too close. Would be way too close to this, that I just don't think that would actually fly in the real world. And then, I like the music, I like all the casting, but there's just something about some of these streaming shows that even when they film them and they've got great production, then they upload it to the Apple TV servers and it gets like a haze and all the colors become fucking dull. And like, I hated the way this show looked. Like, I absolutely just thought it looked like, like independent digital cinema or something where we're trying to be intense, so we're muting some of the colors and cranking up the yellows and certain things. And visually, I just found it really unappealing, which obviously this is not supposed to be like a lush visual feast like an episode of Lost, but I just found it so drab. And it's like the subject matter itself is going to be so dreary. I don't need the visuals exactly to match. And I just, like I said, a lot of these streaming shows just look like they've been fed through like a fucking bullshit filter to make everything just feel kind of cheap. And I wish that they didn't have that. And especially from a guy like David E. Kelly, where, you know, it was just an ABC legal drama, but you watch Boston Legal and like the colors pop so much, even when they're in the courtroom, and it just looks so much better than like this. This just feels like this is going to be intense, so let's mute the colors and let's dial up the haze. And I was like, ugh, no, thank you.
You know what? I am with you there 110% because I watched Lost on streaming a couple years ago because I wanted to do my yearly rewatch. And even then, on streaming, folks, Lost, the color palette looked flat to me. The images, the scenery, it was the same, but everything looks flatter on streaming. But guys, I got to a point where I go like, am I going blind or what the hell? And I got so pissed at the way that Hulu handled the actual visible presentation that I actually went to go and dig out my Lost Blu-rays. And the second I put in my Lost Blu-rays to go to what Matt was talking about, the colors just exploded. And I'm like, what the hell? I am hoping that streaming will eventually get to that moment. But for now, like, if I ever make anything for streaming, I'm going to make sure that I make my show at least as appealing as I can be for the streaming market. Because here's another thing: wouldn't the DP know that?
You would think, again, I can't tell, like, this does look like a streaming piece of shit, but then you can't tell if like they intentionally just wanted it to mirror like the darkness of the subject matter. But I find it distracting when, you know, we're supposed to be focusing on the characters and the stuff that Rusty is digging up, and I'm like squinting because the frame is so fucking dark and washed out, and I'm like, what are we even looking at half the time?
Yeah, I really think it's a unfortunate sort of microcosm of the times that we live in. It annoys the shit out of me. That's why I get things that I really love and really care about on physical media, because I know the author's true vision will be preserved on physical media. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, either do I. So now that we are kind of at the end of this, I'm not going to weigh in with this because I have seen the original. Do you think Rusty did it at this point in the show? And who do you think if not Rusty, then who so far?
I'm going to say for right now, not Rusty. And I'm going to take that motherfucker guy who was running for mayor, because I don't like that character at all. I think that these two buffoons, of one of who's Skarsgård, I think that these two buffoons knew that Rusty was having an affair, and they knew that they could use his affair to hang him out to dry. They just needed something very, very violent to happen. And what could they do, right? They take the best fucking lawyer in the office and they fucking kill the office slut to do it. Now this, what I'm saying right now sounds so outlandish, but if you think about it, hearing what I've heard about David E. Kelly, it may not seem too outlandish. I mean, listen, by the end of it, I might end up saying that, guys, I was way off base, but I might not be.
You might not be. So if you're following along right now, Marcelo's got his money on Nico De La Guardia and Tommy Malto in cahoots to kill Carolyn Polimas, and we will have to see if that is what comes to pass as we continue the rest. Again, I'm not weighing in because that Harrison Ford movie from the 90s was a staple when I was growing up, because it was it was like a Harrison Ford movie where it had sex and it had murder, and it was like I shouldn't be watching this as a young kid, but Harrison Ford was in it, so my parents were like, "Well, Harrison Ford's in it; it must be fine." And it was not fine, but it was good. So I know how that ends, and I know that this show might twist stuff, but I think we're still going to follow a lot of the basic point.
All right, guys. So that'll bring a conclusion to this episode of Radio 815. Guys, if you like what we talk about here and you want to send us messages for whatever reason, I will be the only one addressing them because Matt has been wise and he has run away from the internet. If you want to email us with any thoughts, questions, concerns, or whatever, our email is radio815@aol.com. If you want to talk to me about anything having to do with Bad Robot or this new show that we're talking about, thank God we're talking about something new in Bad Robot. If you've been here for a while, you know what we're talking about. But I am reachable at CreekFanatic88 on X or Twitter or whatever the fuck you choose to call it these days. But Matt, if the folks do not want to reach you at all, how can they how can they attempt to find you?
They can find me on Letterboxd at MDC3000, and we can log and like some movies and reviews together.
All right, guys, that'll do it for us for now. But as I say often, thank you so much for listening. And as I say often, we'll talk back soon.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.